from Oracle. She is a graduate from the University of Houston, so Texas, holler back, in computer science, held many senior level positions. You can read these bios. These bios are on our Instagram, they're on our website. What I do love though, and what we have an opportunity to share, is a fun fact. So Wynn's fun fact was in January 2020, she was on the Jimmy Kimmel Show, where she got to ask Al Pacino who was his favorite kisser. So who was Al Pacino's favorite kisser? Because I love Al Pacino's circa Scent of a Woman. Like, that's my jam. So what did he say? Like, what was that like, Wynn? Tell us.
He said that it was Michelle Pfeiffer. And I think at one point he dated Michelle Pfeiffer. So maybe there's some extra little story to that spicy kiss.
Like, his voice, right? Like, you can already hear Al Pacino's voice. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, but where does Jimmy record again? Where were you?
I was down in LA for a wedding, and it was kind of serendipitous that my husband and I ended up over there, and they had this little booth that said, "Do you have a question for Al Pacino?" And I thought, bloody hell, I have a question for Al Pacino.
That's so great. Oh God, did he ask about me? Okay, moving along. Next panelist. Our next panelist, Minji Shim. Minji comes to us from Northwestern Mutual. So that the finance industry, she is a director in their recruiting practice, and she graduated from University of Maryland, Baltimore County. So holler back, Maryland. All of you, I know you guys are out there because you have very good sports. University of Maryland has good sports. She has a degree in psychology, and we are very excited to have her. Minji, so I got to pick these, okay? Everyone gave me their fun facts, but I'm just fascinated. Minji is a weight trainer. And at her best, she can deadlift 225 pounds and leg press 500 pounds. So Minji, talk to me about this. Is that like, how many like dogs is 500 pounds? Like, how many is that a car? Like, what is?
I mean, I don't think it's a car. Maybe like just
like a Pinto?
The hood. Maybe the hood or a few tires. But yeah, I have very, very uniquely strong legs. I'm very proud of them. And I was telling Jess, because she was like, 500 pounds. And I was like, one day I'll show you, if we meet in person, my very thick, strong legs.
That's awesome. Great, good deal. I'm picturing you like dragging one of those like semis behind you, people like that do that, like world's strongest. So we got, like I told you, you're in for a treat. This is a really cool panel. Okay, next up, we have, next slide. There we go. Also from Northwestern Mutual, thank you for coming, Jess Choi. She is a senior director of their diversity and inclusion Asian segment. Jess has many fun facts, but I got to keep this kosher. So I'm going to go with the Bikram yoga one. So talk to us about that, Jess. Talk to us about like being DC is pretty humid right now. So I feel like you just being outside and doing some stretches. So how long did it take to achieve that?
There is actually a really, really good, I call myself a hoagie, and I am from Philadelphia, but hot yogi. There is actually a really, really good Bikram a studio right in Dupont Circle. So when I travel, I do go find, hot yoga places and random places and do join the community there. But apparently Beyonce also is a hoagie too. So it's a good exercise. I'm missing out because of COVID. We haven't been able to be back in the studio. So hopefully we'll be back soon.
Yeah, I'm going to need some Lysol with that, girl. Okay, great. Very interesting. Okay, last but certainly not least, at great expense to management, we have Hun Kwik joining us from Under Armour. Hun is a senior director in government relations on behalf of Under Armour. She received her political science and business administration degree from the University of Washington. Hun's fun fact, I like this one. Her last vacation pre-COVID, she went to a remote island where they filmed the Survivor series. So talk to us a little bit about that luxurious 4 seasons experience, Hun.
Oh yeah, planes, trains, and automobiles, plus a boat to get there. And then they had to basically put our luggage on another boat to get us to our hut. And so our hut basically had no motorized vehicles. And it was quite the adventure. We all survived because clearly I made it, but barely.
Nice. Okay. All right. So as you can see, we have a really great team for you here today. I'm going to kick it off with our first question, which I bet the chat's going to light up for this. So chat, I highly recommend you give us also your first thoughts. we are talking today about Asian women in male-dominated career fields. So I'm curious, in the last year, we've had some really interesting movement, really exciting movement. Not just, I made my kids watch Raya and the Last Dragon. I made her watch the full-length Mulan, even though it's probably not age appropriate because there's like some scary stuff. We're seeing representation. With that representation, panelists, when you saw Kamala Harris sworn in as VP, when you saw Kim Ning be named the GM for the Marlins. Okay, I'm a huge Dodgers fan, the Marlins, but whatever. What give me one word to describe, just pick either one, either momentous historic occasion. Give me one word. I'll start with Win. One word. Just feeling that. Yeah, one word.
Okay, my one word is trailblazers. It's exciting to see these Asian women in role models that have been traditionally dominated by men. And I love that we're creating this new acceptable norm, making it boundless for our future women.
Trailblazers, love it. Jess.
Inspired in that, when we see these trailblazers, making momentous moments, I look at the future and see who else is coming after us and who is being inspired.
Love it. Inspiration. Okay, Han, back to you.
Similar to what Jess just said, achievement. The fact that I have a daughter who can now say for the first time, Madam Vice President, and that has meaning behind that.
Great. Okay, so caution team, we're going to get to Minji, but just be prepared. You're going to feel some shivery. Like I feel like I'm feeling the energy. this is really cool. Minji, one word to describe, the Kim and Kamala breaking that glass ceiling for us.
Appreciation would be my word. But as much as I appreciate every advancement for females in American history and in the career fields, I can't help but also feel frustration for how still far, far behind we are from where we need to be. So appreciation, but also, a call for advancement.
I love that call for advancement. Tina, Crystal, Zumi, one word, feelings to kick us off and just get us baseline on women empowerment and women in the career field.
I was really proud. That comes to mind.
Yes. Okay.
Excitement. That's mine. I was excited to see what's next, right? Like, yes, it's a start, but like there's going to be more to come. So I'm really excited for the next.
Very cool. Okay. All right. So with that, let's get on to our first question. How often are we the only women or person of color in a room? So with our different industries, does it bother you? Does it intimidate you? So oftentimes I am in the financial services industry. I came from banking into consulting, so professional services, it's all men, predominantly white men. So especially old banking. I started in old banking and that was just, the boardroom did not look diverse at all. So how often are you, in your experiences, the only woman of color, person of color? And does it bother you, intimidate you? What are some tips for our cohort here today? Wynn, thoughts on that?
Well, I grew up in Miami and there was a lot of Asians over there. And even throughout school, I was the one and only, usually the only Chinese girl in a class. And even in college, although there were probably more Asians in Texas or Houston where I went to school, but in computer science, I was often the one and only Chinese person. And even today, in my current job, working for a technology company, we do have a lot of Asians. A lot of them are more in the development field. However, I'm in the pre-sales, in the sales arena, and truly I am the one and only. And I would say that in my earlier career, it probably felt a bit lonely and I craved encouragement. But today, I embrace it. I find that in order to make a statement, you really need to pull people forward. You need to find ways to stand out. And I think that in order for me to be where I am today, I had to be bold. I had to make a statement and pull women along. So I think that those things are what I do to continue to move forward. And one of the things that we've done within the group that I'm in, I'm part of the Oracle Women's Leadership, is that I've started an organization that is bringing in our executive VPs and having these mentor circles where we've brought in top performers within the ERGs who are piloting this program to see great success. So I think that those are things that we're doing so that we won't be the one and only.
Love it. And since this is the Greater Washington DC chapter of Ascend, Hun, could I turn it over to you and just kind of talk to us about your experience on the Hill, your experience as possibly being the only woman or person of color walking on that hill. I had my internship on the Hill as well, so would love to hear some perspectives on that.
Sure, absolutely. And I think that there's no question that walking onto the Hill in 2003, there was definitely a lot of maleness, and particularly white maleness in Congress. And to my members of Congress who I worked for, they saw female leadership. They found chiefs of staff who or staff directors who had the top role in advising the congressman that I worked for and the senator that I worked for. And I think that having role models who are in these leadership positions were incredibly meaningful. But to be able to put them into that position, the prior person had also invested in the development of these leaders as well. And so, kudos to the allies that are here on the call today, helping us think through those opportunities for us to pull along different folks to provide them opportunities, whether it's women or people of color. I think there's also an opportunity to network on the Hill that I never experienced before. I built myself, you walk into a reception and you look around and you're trying to figure out who am I going to sip this drink with and try to kill time while I sort of nosh back in the day when there were free appetizers at these Hill events. But what I found was that, you built a network, and that network, in fact, connected me with the Democrats to be able to go out to the field and organize AAPI voters. So I got sent to God knows where, Oregon, Washington, Las Vegas, to go and organize voters every single election. And it was only through that network that I made on the Hill that helped me get connected with the DNC and get me connected into these leadership roles in the campaign. So I would say yes, but I'll get to that in a later point about the evolution of the Hill.
Yes. Okay. So that kind of, you're teeing me up for my question. Is it ever a burden for you to be that trailblazer or that representative of your intersectionality, of being the female, being the Asian American, being the whatever your identity may be? So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, great question, because I took some time to really think through how I wanted to represent myself here at this event. And one of the things that kept creeping back to me is that when I first started on the Hill, I had a gentleman tell me, and this was, a man of Asian descent said, you're the AAPI hire in this office. And I thought, so I can go one way and say that's just gonna, I'm the token now. Or the other end of it is to say, I'm gonna stand up and represent and just own the fact that I am a female, I am AAPI, I am going to speak for the voices of those folks that, have never had this opportunity before. But let's just give folks some credit. I think in this Congress, in the 117th Congress, we've seen the largest representation in diversity, in racial and ethnic diversity as in members of Congress, in representation. But we still have a lot to do when it comes to the staffing and making sure that folks at the top levels, at the chief of staff and the legislative directors, have the opportunities to advise members of Congress as well. So it's great to have them at the top and be representative of their districts, but the people who work for them also need to be representative. And that's something that I'm really proud to have, supported my member of Congress, both in the House and the Senate, to make sure that the voices of both Asians and women, as well as those folks with my background, have had in public policymaking.
Yes, I'm going to do a lot of these. I'm going to do a lot of these snappings. Yes, thank you. Again, on the concept of trailblazing and tokenism, let's go to Minji for a second. Do you have a perspective, or in your experience at Northwestern recruiting, what has that experience been like for you? Because on the one side, you definitely want to give, props and time and, acknowledgement to that space. But then sometimes you get to be that one person that's always being, asked to do the thing. Minji, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. With that, I mean, always being asked to do something, always being asked to do something because you're female. I think that comes to mind of something my managing partner has said, which, everyone is on their journey to allyship. It's your job to just respect that they are on that journey, not where they are on that journey. So with that, having grace for others, but also standing up for yourself and your boundaries. I don't think I personally feel intimidated or bothered to be the only female in a room. I think that just comes from me being very proud of my femininity, thinking that there are advantages to being female. There are things that I can see that maybe my male counterparts can't, a perspective that I can provide in a room. But to avoid tokenism in a workplace, something that Hun just mentioned, I really think there has to be a genuine and constant effort towards inclusion, and it has to be supported through the leadership. I think allyship is a running theme in this conversation. And the reason for allies being so important is, as much as you can stand up for yourself, if no one else is also with you, it's hard to get a team together or to get a movement across. I see this in my own workplace. So when I was first hired, just like a lot of people on this call, my name is very representative of my nationality. Minji Shim is a Korean name. Every time I'm in a new setting, a thought comes to mind of someone mispronouncing my name, me having to skirt around that conversation or having to advocate for myself, right? An internal debate of, is this important, right? Is my name a conversation that is important to have? But when I came into my workplace, something my leadership made sure to do is make sure that every single person in my office knew what my name was before I even came in. And so I never had to have that conversation. And that mundane action of my leadership, really caring about my experience here, really made me feel like this was a genuine effort towards inclusion, not some tokenism of me being a part of the team. So I really think it has to come from those on top, and it has to be a very genuine effort, or else it just doesn't feel right?
Yeah, for sure. Great. Our chat's lighting up. That means it's resonating. Thank you. Thank you for these comments. Okay, so next question for you. I wonder if anyone here has experienced the boys club. So of all of our industries here represented, and participants, drop in the chat if there's an industry that you're in that we aren't representative of. What are your thoughts on the boys club and this dynamic of feeling pressure or feeling obligated to assimilate or to maybe adjust your style and your professional style because you're in a male dominated environment and you want to be a part of that, whether or not you believe you should be a part of that boys club? Jess, could we start with you over at Northwestern Mutual?
Yeah, so I'll share an example. When I was applying for a sales role after business school, one of the interview questions during the process was, do you golf? And at that point, I did not. Fast forward a dozen years later, I still do not. And I answered that I will. And that gave me the job. And, fast forwarding to this whole notion of inclusion that Minji just talked about, when we focus on similarity versus difference, so when there's an inclusion in place, it's easier for people to understand the difference. So, in the D&I world, you've seen kind of diversity roles start up, and now it's become D&I, the inclusion. I think you're seeing a lot of trends of belonging and also equity that is in fact. And I think, many ways that we do play some sort of a code switching or assimilation to understand the dominant culture or get included in the dominant culture. and how you start to really own your identity and be able to either educate the dominant culture on your difference, and to bring those members along in their journey. I think it will be incredible. I think, during our prep session, one of the stories I shared is, I've seen many of the leaders that were trailblazers before me, and they were the tokens, the one or twos, and they had short hair, they wore pantsuit, they had to assimilate into the dominant culture in a certain way. And as you can see, I like my hot pink lipstick, I'm wearing my pink blazer, and being able to really, bring your own whole self to work and be able to educate and invite people to the conversation will be incredible. Minji, I love the fact that you shared about your name. So when I first came into this country, people just changed my name, right? I'm Chonga in Korean, and the nuns at my Catholic school started to call me Joan because they couldn't pronounce my name. And at that point in time, I did not even know what was happening from a dominant culture, right? And when I saw the acceptance speech at the Oscars and how Yoon Yo-jung actually pointed out that Brad Pitt mispronounced her name, and be bold enough to say that on that platform, as like women leading in these like male-dominated industry, how can we continue to be bold and take and own our space to educate others, will be something that I'm also in my own journey with.
I love that. And I think that there's so much synergy between names and respect, and making sure that you provide that platform for folks to just frankly correct you and accept that correction, because it is about respect at the end of the day. I think my Chinese name is Yoon, which eventually became just Han. And so to your point, Jess, like that process has been its own evolution. And I also love the fact that you responded back and said, I will. I think in the lobbying world, when I stepped into the private sector, I thought this whole like deals were cut on the golf course, deals were cut in a cigar room, backslapping. And I'll tell you, like, it actually, that's not how it's done. And that I think has been a game, just a realization in this process. There is a lot of hard work. There is a lot of technocrats, and being a subject matter expert, whether it's being a woman or having my background, growing up with food stamps and poverty, has given me this diverse voice in the public policy conversation. I would also say, add one more element. I think that it's easy as women to also say, like, I need to hide my children from all of this chaos that's happening inside my home, like keyboard up, right? You don't see the like kid that's crawling in behind me. But one thing that I saw, and it's part of demonstration, right? When your leaders themselves demonstrate that it's okay to have sort of chaos happening. And the first time I saw this, or one of the ones that made an impression with me, was during the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, when I was in the Senate. This was when the financial crisis was happening. It was so crazy when our economy was just kind of like what we saw during COVID. We were negotiating, I was in the Senate, negotiating with the White House. And what I saw was, I had an infant at the time. I had my boss who had two children, young children at the time. And then our White House negotiator also had children. And so having to work through our schedules with children and bedtime, and really like getting on the phone at 10 o'clock at night, because that was our window to talk, I think just goes to show you that you can do it. Everyone, you just have to find allies and have the support of people like your boss, who also have children and can understand that, but also speaking up and asking for that time, or asking for what you need in your job.
Love that, Han. And just for clarity, Ascend community, if you are a cigar smoker and you want me to join your party, I'm all in. So let me know.
I love it. Jess can teach us how to cut a cigar.
So Marina, one of our guests here, Marina, mentioned that she's in tech and it's 100% a boys club. Emily, where's the book? Brotopia. Emily Chang wrote Brotopia. So, and she mentioned that oftentimes in the meetings where she's the only woman, they call me dude. And I wanted to just highlight that for the panelists and for the audience, because it is very interesting what people think is appropriate to refer to, whether you're a woman. So what they refer to as a girl, a lady, still doesn't sound good. Woman, okay, yeah, I am, but definitely not girl or lady. And then when conversely, I find myself, Marina, calling someone dude, that's my sign of disrespect. If I'm calling another man dude, I'm like, listen, dude, like that means I'm like, like that's my version of girl. So there's also these microaggressions that people have just in gender, in the way they refer to us as a gender. So, and I had a friend ask me, hey, we're about to send out this props to our teammates, and they're two females, both doctors, like scientists, like very accomplished scientists. She said, we're calling them ladies. Does that sound weird? And I said, yeah, like call them doctor. Like, what does it matter that they're, because if it was a man, would you be like, what's up, man? You know? So it's just kind of trying in our environments and in our daily meetings and stuff to reframe what that sounds like and try to use different terminology, because it shouldn't matter. Like, I feel like saying, or I'd be curious anyone else's perspective, panelists, of like terminologies that they use when they refer. And then I'm going to get to us to the next question, which is so good. Just like one thought on that. Any panelists, any follow-ups? Calling someone dude.
Or like,
sorry.
Go ahead, Wen.
I was just going to say that often people say guys in general, and I don't know if it's more East that they do that, but they clump you into, hey guys, let's do blah, 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 blah. And I think it's just become acceptable, sadly, that people don't make any corrections and say, I am obviously not a guy. So I think that what we can do to combat that is that you use your voice and your power to make it known that I'm really sorry. Last time I looked, I'm not a guy.
Yes.
Kind reminder.
Yeah. And when I'm from Philadelphia, so like, hey guys, is like something that's very local to here. And it is a messy word that I am trying to eliminate from my vocabulary when I'm engaging with my audience, because, for some of our LGBTQ community, I'm not being very inclusive as a leader. So, I'm cognizant of what I need to do to develop as an inclusive leader. And also, like Minji can attest to this, and, at Northwestern Mutual, we do at times have it's a very male-dominated financial services, investments, and planning industry, and like some of the gestures, right? This like kind of the bro, shoulder, fist pumping, and we point it out and say, like, imagine if you have a female recruit coming into the door, and how inclusive is that, right? So just being able to like look at those gestures, or Kat, I think you called it microaggressions, to be able to point out the behavior so that we're opening thoughts. It may be that they just don't know what they don't know.
Sure.
Exactly.
Sure. Okay. All right. I'm going to get us on track here with my cue cards. Okay. So next segment is common themes. We find that minorities often have to work harder or do extra or do more in order to meet the standards or have recognition. Compound that with being a woman who may be a mother, who may be, just trying to make her way. And that gets really complex. So would love to hear from the panelists your perspectives. Let's start with Minji. Have you ever been in a situation where you feel like you've had to either work harder or prove yourself? Not even tapping into that 500 bench pressing nonsense, because that is legit. Okay. If anyone comes for you, I'd be like, don't talk to my girl Minji, because we got the listen. but yeah, like, have you ever think back, actually not in this position, let's talk to the junior people on the team, on the call, starting out in your career, did you ever have to feel like you had to work extra hard or put in extra hours?
Yeah, I think maybe I'm just a very hard critic of myself, but I don't really think about it as extra hours or working harder than someone else. I just think about it as my personal best or not my personal best. I'm always challenging myself, and I don't pay too much mind to what others are doing in comparison of my activity. So I feel like that might be a mindset thing. I've been a little bit different in that. And I know when preparing for this, I was trying to think of how to make that a constructive thing to say, or something that someone can take home and learn from. I think that in itself is my own confidence. And my relationship with the word confidence is that for a lot of my life, or majority of my life, I have never seen myself as a very confident person. I think when I typically think of confidence, it's not necessarily anything to do with my work ethic. It had to do with maybe I think I attributed it to it like, oh, my female friend who was the best at flirting or whatever, she's a very confident woman, right? But I hadn't attributed it to my work ethic. But to me, when I try to dive into what I have as confidence and why I think I'm confident, a few years back when I started at NM, Dan Nguyen, who was my field director, we were talking about confidence, and he said, Minji, I see you as a confident person. And I was like, me, Dan, really? And then he's like, yeah, I do. And then I had to see why Dan saw me as one and why I didn't see myself as one. And I think part of that comes from my positivity, right? In another team meeting I had earlier today, a team member said, I'm afraid to set goals because of fear of failing. When I think about that, those are negative thoughts creating a negative mindset, right? Fear and failure, very negative attributes. And I honestly never feel that way. I think I could achieve anything as long as I set my mind to it. And if I don't achieve something, if I don't make it across that finish line, I always tell myself it's not because of me not being able to do that. It's because I didn't want it enough, right? It's not my capability. So I think positivity is really a huge confidence, or it appears to be very confident if you're very positive of who you are and what you can achieve. Also, I think
oh, excuse me, sorry. Really quick. So we have a comment that I think it would be helpful for everyone if I just like point us out to it real quick. Marina shares that we can't deny the systems of racial, gender, and other forms of oppression and discrimination that do exist that are very pervasive. They're systemic. And that's a good point, Marina, because, you know, even though our panelists are at very high levels in their organizations, in their careers, and very advanced, that's not to say that, you know, the struggles aren't still real and very apparent. So, or you came from an Asian culture and had Asian parents where they expected me to be a doctor or a lawyer. Didn't do either. They're still asking me when I'm going to go back to school. And I'm like, I don't need to, Mom, I make a lot of money. I'm kidding. This is being recorded. But you know what I mean? Like when you really are in your authentic Asian, when I think of my experience as an Asian American, as a Filipino, you know, third generation American, there were only certain options. And so some people may not have had the ability or the opportunity because of the industry they decided to go into, i.e. banking, to not avoid those systems of oppression. So very good point, Marina. And you know, again, everyone drop your ideas into the chat. I love it. It's really important for us to continually remind and reinforce that. So, you know, behind Minji, she's going to be bringing the next person forward and they're going to learn from her example and her confidence. And that is an amazing thing. So when engineering, oh girl, that is a man space. Okay, like I went to school and that engineering building was all dudes and not necessarily cute ones, just saying. So that's a tough one. Again, Brotopia, Emily Chang, on my bookshelf. Are you familiar with the concept of imposter syndrome? Can you help our you know, audience here understand that and how that may impact your experience as a professional?
Sure. And, you know, recently I had changed jobs in the middle of the pandemic. Most people are hanging on to their jobs. And for me, it was an opportunity to grow my career. And I ended up going into the solutions engineering team, which is pre-sales for Oracle, selling our technology. And it had actually been quite a while since I had really focused on the technology aspect. The prior job that I had was really marketing, and the prior job before that was leading a technical team. However, It was creating templates and configuration. And this was a bit net new. I had done pre-sales before, but it was on the application side. And so the hiring manager did let me know that 4 other guys that were on the team applied for the same position, and they ended up selecting me. And at first it was a little bit intimidating. And the whole concept of, imposter syndrome, feeling like that you don't really belong, that, the whole idea of that you doubt your own capabilities, feel a bit like a fraud. And the reality is that if the hiring manager felt that I was the best person for the job, I should bloody well feel that I am the best person for that job. I should not let someone else's mind and these little negative thoughts come and infiltrate your mind about making you feel less adequate or that you don't belong. And so for me, I think about how to build up and how to support other women. There was a woman when I was working at Siebel, and she was this Chinese woman who was not being fully appreciated by her manager. And she didn't know how to stand up for herself. She didn't know how to have her voice. And so through some coaching, we met every week for a few weeks until she had the courage to really have that discussion. That I said, it's not that your boss may not totally understand all the things that you've done, but if you are not advocating for yourself, if you're not demonstrating and sharing those stories of what you're doing and how you're either leading your team, leading the project, and having that story, there's no way that your manager would know all of those things. And you need to have that voice, and you need to, because you have to be your best advocate. So I think in terms of, being authentic to yourself, how to figure out the credibility, you build that credibility by delivering, you build that credibility by executing. And so that's my advice.
Can I ask you a follow-up question there, because we're actually running pretty hot, and so we've got time to stroll down the lane a little bit. When building that credibility, did you get that opportunity? Like what could I do if I'm someone who's just struggling to even get noticed by my manager? Like I can do the work. That's kind of was the original question. You're doing the work, you're doing extra work, but is it the case that we have to, do we acknowledge that, panelists, do we acknowledge that we sometimes have to do more work? Is that the reality of the struggle?
You know what, I would say that that for me, it was really a matter of how to tell that narrative and also to execute against a plan. You can't just have it happen spontaneously. You actually have to execute. When I was the key account director for Kaiser Permanente, I had just come into this role. We had gotten acquired by Oracle. I had left Oracle to work for a tiny little company called Logic Labs, where I was the vice president of customer experience. And when we got acquired, they asked me to manage this multi-million-dollar account. And it required a lot of dedication, working on figuring out how to work at the C-level, how to understand what their needs are. And eventually we ended up growing that account. And I think that a lot of it had to do with the relationship management and building that credibility. But often you have to be able to tell those stories. You have to be able to be a great listener. You don't even have to say a lot. You just have to have some great questions to ask. So I think often you need to have that confidence from within, and you have to believe in yourself. So I think those things help you to grow that confidence and to be able to advocate for yourself.
Very cool. Can I draw? Was that echoing or me? Okay, good. Hun had a great comment here. Confidence looks differently on different people. Not everyone needs to wear a cape to be confident. Yes, that's kind of what I was getting to. There are so many different ways to be really effective and impactful. You don't have to be the most introverted, extroverted, whatever. What I hope a lot of, if I go back to our objectives here, which I have taped on my Yeti, because that's what our production looks like over here, okay? Didn't get a studio. I'd asked for a studio. I got a cool mug though. Thank you, Ascend. When I look at our objectives, it's like, how can we help and talk about ways we could do this that's authentic to each of our individual experiences? Like some people just aren't going to be bold enough to say, hey, I need a raise. Like that's just unheard of. It may not be that time where it is even acceptable. Like I get often feedback that I'm direct, which I feel, like I see some head shaking. What does it mean when a man or a woman tells you you're too direct, or you're just direct, period? Because I feel like if a man was direct, then he's leading, he's letting us know what the objective is, he's strategic.
You know what, Kat, I kind of feel like if you don't ask, you don't get. And I kind of feel like often we're so busy thinking that someone's going to, maybe as a Chinese person, growing up, we were asked to not really, rock the boat or say too much. But as a Chinese American, I know that if I am not asking for my promotion, if I'm not negotiating when I'm getting a new job, shame on me, because I'm not going to get the most. And they're not going to, out of the gate, they're not going to say, this is the most that you can get. You should always be able to go and ask for more. So advocate for yourself.
Yeah, and Wynn, I love what you're saying. At one point in my development, I was with this women's group where we actually named our group Nasty Nice. So group name was Nasty Nice. And what that really signified is sometimes when we are being very commanding or demanding, right, we are told that, oh, so like she's being nasty. Or sometimes like there's this notion of like Asian women being submissive and passive. So, when I come off as, being commanding and demanding, right? It's all these like biases and, notions that come along. So, how do we continue to elevate ourselves and being able to promote ourselves or being able to share about our achievements in a way, and
Right.
How do we continue to demand the outcomes from our team, right? By being very direct
And not
and being
labeled
assertive.
a bitch.
Exactly.
Yes.
And there's the F-bomb, or there's the curse word we were all wondering if it was going to come. I love this conversation because I feel like there's so much honesty about our experiences, and what we've seen here from the comments here, like from Eleanor, like it's actually helpful for us to talk about these experiences with one another so that we can share and learn. I will give full credit to one of my colleagues when I was interviewing for this job at Under Armour. She was kind of like an acquaintance that I'd worked with for a little while, but I knew she was interviewing for another job as well. So I pulled her aside and I just said, can I just ask for your help? Tell me what I should be negotiating for. And she looked at me and she goes, can we put on our big girl panties and just talk, like have real talk right now? And I said, yeah. She opened up her notebook and was like, here's my offer. Here's your way of evaluating what is possible. And that's when I knew that Under Armour the offer was a strong offer. And so that just goes to show you that if we can all put on our big girl panties and have the real talk and really take and accept that and give and take that the feedback from our peers as feedback to only make ourselves better. If the intention is to make yourself better, I think that those are the kinds of elements that have helped me along the way.
That's a really great point. And I think also a little bit about some of those women that don't support women. And I think that we need to also have discussions about that, because I know that
girl on girl violence.
Exactly. So how can we influence that? How can we be more supportive, and how can we get others to support women as well? Women and men, frankly, to support women.
Okay, I love it. I'm back. Hi. Just went to the restroom and came right back. I'm kidding. Thank you, panelists. And lots of really, again, we did this. Can we talk through that, Tina? Great advice on in the workplace. As much as cultures and environments around us say we should give credit to the team and we should be, there's no I in team. There is importance in being able to also own your, you know, your successes. So I did it. You know, that is really powerful and really good advice. Really good advice. Okay. All right. So we still have time to do our last question. We're going to do the full 15 minutes for this last question. So all 4 panelists, you're going to get a shot. Get ready. And then we're going to go into 10 minutes of Q&A and or just more chatting and talking through that. And just for the allies on the phone, you can also put on your big boy panties if that's what you wear. We are inclusive. We are inclusive. Okay. What do you think? And I'll go by group because we have different industries. What do you think is needed to even the playing field a little bit? And by that, I mean, bring more women into your field, bring more Asian women into your field. As we look at the way, you know, Minji was spot on, like kind of disappointed that it took this long, right? How am I this excited at this age to be like, girls, look, there's an Asian Disney princess. In fact, we don't do princesses in this house. We do the ones that do the work. Okay. Like that's why Mulan was so cool. Like I don't know if anyone saw that, but Gong Li's character, she was a warrior. And that's like, that resonated with me. Like I was crying because I'm like, God, like she did all of the work. I don't know if any of you watched Games of Thrones. All the ladies did all the work, got down to King's Landing, and then some dude in a wheelchair was the one. And that's not like an ADA thing. I'm just saying, like, it ended up being a man that they picked to be the king or something. So all this to say, here's your journey. What can we do to even the playing field? What can you do? Because people are looking in at you. You're in the room and they want to be in that room with you. Advice, thoughts? Let's start with Jess. Or
I think one is just, you know, a sense opportunity to even just host us to be here. You know, representation matters. And, you know, I always talk about the fact that when you have somebody like myself who has a broken English, I can't speak Korean, I can't speak English, you know, I'm kind of perfecting my Konglish a bit, you know, like that representation matters. And you know, when I have an opportunity to just even to be able to share my story and be really intentional about inviting others to the table, you know, I think that is one thing that, you know, I can do to pave a way, you know, and, you know, invite Minji to an organization called Ascend. And now here she is, you know, sharing her story as, you know, a talent acquisition leader, leading our organization. And, you know, I look at her and go, wow, look at just the future that's ahead of us and how exciting she is and how like bold that she just like says her things. And I'm like, oh, I don't know, as a Gen Xer, would I have said it that way? Like, I just love her boldness, you know, as she's just so unapologetically just being herself. So I think those are some of the things that we can do, Kat, is to just invite others to the table and be much more intentional of being an advocate for others.
Thank you, Jess. Intentional. Great. I'm going to repeat like some key terms for the group here because that's one of the takeaways from Jess's comments. Minji, Northwestern Mutual. What can you're looking in? There's someone back there looking in at you, and you're in the room. What can they do? Like how can you even the playing field?
Yeah, I think something that has been said before by Wynn is really me being an advocate for other women. As much as I think we can say, be your own self-advocate, allyship is again so important. And I'm going to share a story of, I'm the director of recruitment and selection for Northwestern Mutual. There's multiple directors of recruitment of selection for Northwestern Mutual. And I had a prospective candidate for this position call me. And she called me and she said, like, look, I'm interviewing for this role. Can you tell me a little bit about this and this and this and this? And the conversation kept going on. And then it came to compensation. She wanted to know the compensation of this role, right? And I could sit there and say like, oh, I'm not going to share with you how much I make, right? I'm in fear of maybe of somehow it affecting me, right? I don't want to share this information with you to uplift you in your career as you are brand new in this career. I don't know who you are, not going to share this information with you. Or I could share that information with her, right? And allow her to grow in her own career and see her progress and uplift her, right? With this information that I'm holding. So I think as much as you can support yourself and be a self advocate, you have to really be out there helping other women progress in their careers too. I know Gabrielle Union, an actress, an African American actress that I really love and have looked up to, and I read her book. She said in there that there was a time where she didn't like or she would rumor or talk badly about other Black actresses, and somehow thinking that it would benefit her in her relationships, in her career, in progressing herself. But it never resulted in that, right? It never affected her personal life, whether or not she talked badly about other Black actresses. And so, with that being said, I think as a woman, you have to be a really strong ally to other women, right? Lay it all on the table, be honest, be genuine with them about your experiences where you currently are, and invite them, right? With open arms and say, I will support you. And I hope we can support each other in growing in this industry. So I really think it comes down to a relationship with other women in the industry as well.
I want to repeat when Minji lay it on the line. I respect that. I love that. That is the force that we need right now, because the momentum's going. Like, all we have to do is keep running forward. There is a bamboo ceiling. It is a actual like thing that exists. There's a glass, and then we got both. So we got the bamboo ceiling and the glass ceiling. So I got my working heels on, and I'm ready to go. That very powerful, Minji. Thank you. Thank you. How about Win over in Oracle, our engineering folks?
Actually, I'm actually hiring people. So if you are a woman and have a great resume for me in pre-sales, come look me up. Over and above that, I think that we do need to diversify. And I think that there's many things that we can do. For example, if someone reaches out to me and I know them, even if it's cursory that I know them. For example, my daughter had a friend that she went to school with, and they were best buddies. And my daughter said, do you think that you could have a session with, my friend Nikki and talk to her about opportunities? And, those are things that you can do every day. And why not? Why not give them the tools of the trade and the tricks that you've found? Why not make it easier, smooth out the road to make it easier for that next generation? That really is our goal. That is our responsibility. And we need to pave that. In order for us to pave that, we need to be mentors. We need to create programs that bring up women. We need to participate in organizations like Ascend or Women's Unlimited or PBWC, which is the Professional Business Women of California, or Watermark, or go to Grace Hopper. There are so many organizations that can help bring women up. Over and above that, I would say that we need to start talking to girls at a very young age that STEM is very doable. Don't let them shy away. Empower them to love math, to be inquisitive, to ask questions. Because if we're not going to do that, we are not paving it forward. And lastly, I'm part of the Oracle Women's Leadership Organization, and I purposefully go and look for a few younger women that are early in their career and take it upon myself to mentor those folks, bring them under your wings and help them to rise. Because I kind of feel like when the tide rises, everyone rises. So I think those are things that we can do to make a difference.
Yes, Win. Yes, please help. It is hard out there. And I talk to a lot of interns in the work that we do. Like, they always put me in front of the summer leadership team because I make funny jokes about how the internet used to come out of the wall when I was their age, like, so they think I'm real, like, archaic. I had a BlackBerry, like, that's how gross it is for them. They're like, oh my God, what even is that? Is that like a fruit? But I think those are really important commentary. I have 2 daughters. And I wasn't disappointed, but I also was like, God, it's going to be hard. Like, maybe they'll just be artists or want to just live with me forever. I don't know. But I was definitely not like, you should definitely do what I do, because it's hard. It's a climb. It's a grind. So, Hun, ending with you. Any thoughts on, and just evening that playing field, both in government relations on the Hill and just transitioning into this new role at Under Armour. And I'm not wearing my swag, but I'll send you my address later.
That sounds good. We have some really awesome leggings and sports bras, so I can't wait for you to try it. Listening to all of this, all of the allyship, not only for women, but also thinking about those opportunities for you to step in and really chime and ring someone else's bell for them, right? And as uncomfortable as it may be for you to sort of say, I did this, think about those opportunities for you to step in and raise, and highlight someone's positive work. When I speak about that, I think about the moment where, I passed legislation that then got signed by the President of the United States. I got invited to the Rose Garden to go watch him sign it and celebrate the win there. I will say, though, during that reception, I was in the handshake line, getting ready to shake the president's hand. And there was a moment where I heard the person standing next to me was a male who said, Mr. President, I worked on this bill and blah, blah, blah. And I looked at him and I was like, I have never seen you in my life. I have no idea how you were invited here. And this is shocking. But I will, yeah, exactly. No, excuse me. So I let him politely finish and then immediately stretched my hand, do the block, got blocked. So I did the block and I said, Mr. President, because it was my turn now, right? Mr. President, I want to introduce you to the person in your civil service who is doing all of the work. I don't know what that guy is doing, but doing all of the work. This is a civil servant who is fantastic. And if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have gotten this legislation across the finish line. So in the world of I could have done the I did it kind of thing, right? There was a moment here where I thought, wait a second, I got to write this wrong. And then really point to the folks in the background who are putting in not only the subject matter experts, but also finding a moment to celebrate her win and her knowledge and her capabilities in that fight. So I would also leave one other element with you, and that is that Under Armour has this purpose. We empower those who strive for more. And if I think about this past election and how we showed up in our Run to Vote initiative, working to try to empower as many people as possible to make an impact in this election, one of the things that I'm really proud about, and we saw this reflected in a number of different areas as well, is while we might not have the expertise here to try to drive people to the polls, we partnered with really strong voices like Black Girls Vote to empower them and give them a platform to go and do their work. And so in that case, again, we had the opportunity to use our platform to give someone else a moment to shine. And the partnership just exploded and it was fantastic. Not only was it energized, but we also built a really strong relationship with this organization that we hope to continue over the next couple of years.
Very cool. Very cool. I mean, we're just going to end with that. Bye. That was great. I mean, do we not, Tina, Zumi, do we not have the best panelists ever? I feel like our chat's blowing up. The team is, I'm learning more. Things that I would have done differently and things that I'll do with the interns this summer. This is great. So helpful. So empowering. So before we go into the Q&A portion, basically how this is going to run, we'll use the last 10 minutes ish, to talk through anything you may want to ask. You can either come online or you can drop it into the chat and you can send it privately to me. I will not say your name and you can just send it to me. And we can ask the panelists specifically a question, or you can come off mute if that's, I think we can do that. And while we're waiting for the questions to come in, I'll share this one piece about me. This is before there was the Crazy Rich Asians. My aunt in Los Angeles is a screenwriter, and she wrote about a group of 20-somethings that were coming up in Los Angeles. And she created one of the characters based on me. And when she pitched it, she was a young, up and coming, hustler, just in that male dominated industry, but very good at what she did, yeah, sure, sure. Yeah, really good. And so basically she presents the screenwriter to her, the screenplay and like the pitch, the pilot to the producers and the director. And they come down to the stage of casting. And they're like, this is not an Asian person. And she's like, no, this is based on a real person. She's like, this is my niece, like this is a real person. But at the time, it would be, for these producers in Hollywood, for, that industry, or for what we see on television, it was so ridiculous that there would be a woman that could be in that position and be relatable. So I share that story because that was before Grey's Anatomy and Sandra Oh's insanely amazing character. That was before, again, all of these live action new movies where, we're having representation. But it was just funny to me that was based on a real person, a real experience, my experiences in my career. And the people were saying, yeah, that's not relatable. So I share this to say, hopefully, after this, everyone will disperse and go into your own experiences. And, I think it is relatable. I think we all here are relatable. And I'm excited to stay in touch and continue to elevate your voices and amplify our messages. So, all right, let's go to the chat. Let me check real quick here. Any questions? Yeah, that's right, Lois, not relatable to them. I'm a real person.
Hey, Kat, one question that I would have for our panel, and I didn't get a chance to do this in our prep, I would love to hear from you all, and maybe folks in the chat as well. What is one piece of advice that you wish you had gotten before this job or a previous job? Because I feel like there's, one of the things that I would share is asking questions and being okay to question the positioning or the direction of an organization or a direction of a project. I feel like that was the one piece of advice when I left my previous job. My president and CEO at the time had said, we're going to really miss you for a number of reasons, but your biggest contributor was just asking really hard questions to make sure that we're on the right track. And that's something that has stuck with me as just, it's okay to ask, and it's okay to sort of push the envelope a little bit and reassess where you're at. I'd love to hear from the panelists on that, because I'm going to take notes.
If I could ask my younger self, what I should do differently, or wish that I knew then what I know now, it's pretty much that you must be bold, that you should not shy away from that opportunity to speak out. That the more shy, the more it doesn't get you to where you want to go. And I know it's almost like counter to being Asian, that we're taught to, be on the quieter side, put your head down, they'll see you. But the truth is, if you don't advocate for yourself, if you're not a bit bold, you don't always get chosen.
I think
Minji, yeah.
Yeah, I think something that I would tell myself before starting this job is, in my interviews for being the director of recruitment for Northwestern Mutual, my managing director said to me, I would love for half of my office to be women by the end of the year. And I was like, no problem. Like what's the problem with that, right? Why can't we do that? And I went into the recruiting year thinking that it would happen naturally, right? I work in financial services. Northwestern Mutual is a financial services company. And I thought that I would never have a mindset where I would exclude women from this space. And it would happen. But it honestly didn't happen in my first recruiting year, where half of our office became female. And that's something I realized that within myself, that we as women also have preconceived notions, right, and stereotypes for ourselves and what we can do. And that can get in the way of them even wanting to pursue something like finance. That's something I underestimated before coming into this, and with women in my recruiting and selection process and becoming financial advisors, there has to be a lot of intentionality around that, right? It's not easy, and it's not as easy as just wanting it to happen or giving the jobs to women, right? It has to be a lot of support, and there has to be structures in place for that. So I think if I could go back, I would tell myself to be so intentional about the way that I do this. It's not just a random occurrence that women are not in finance, right? There's a lot more to it. And to really put my eyes on the goal of adding women to this office, right? That should be a priority for me, not something that I think will just happen. So that's something I would tell myself.
Yeah, I think so. It's a fascinating and interesting question, and I think I'm still kind of like in deep thought about it. In that, neuroscience tells us that there are anywhere from 60,000 to 80,000 thoughts, and Kat sharing her book that I've been very fascinated by is Jim Quick's Limitless, where he talks about ants, automatic negative thoughts. And we have those automatic negative thoughts. 80% of our thoughts in a day is those automatic negative self-talks that we have for ourselves. So, I look at, how can, I tell younger Jessica what I can do or make a change or a difference, is that I have my own unique abilities that no one else can contribute. And I think it's really to identify what that is and just really truly be authentically yourself. Because, I look at like that quote of, if you feel like you can't make an impact, try going to bed with a mosquito, and like just the impact.
I don't get the analogy. Am I dumb? Like, help me with that. What?
Yeah.
Ugh.
So if you feel like, because it's just, everyone has a unique ability, right? And can have an influence, the ripple effect that you can create. So, what is that unique ability that you can bring to the table? And I think everyone has a different voice to contribute. As the Stop Asian Hate and all these elements are happening in our community, and I look at this panel and look at the diversity of what we represent, right? Korean, Filipino, Chinese, Cambodian, right? 48 different countries. We all have unique stories and experiences that we can bring to the table to really educate others. And like, I live in the East meets West lifestyle every day. I work for a Fortune 100 organization. I live in a multi-generational household, right? Raising a 23rd generation Choi's, and making sure that our in-laws, 21st generation Choi's, are living and finishing their life with dignity and respect, right? That respecting those that have gone before you, that humility that we have been embedded in our Asian culture. And as women, like, how do we balance that is, I think, something that, I bring to the table at Northwestern Mutual every day, to be able to share about the Asian culture and the multi-generational household and some of the cultural expectation that we are asked to live being Asian Americans here. So Kat, sorry for a long-winded way of sharing that we all have unique ability that we can share. So, how can we uplift our community and share about our culture and be that voice is what I'm trying to, live day to day now.
That is yes, Jess, all of those things, especially with AAPI. I just finished 6 rounds, actually, excuse me, of courageous conversations at my firm regarding AAPI hate, AAPI solidarity, and just like the changes that need to occur. So lots of struggles. I feel like we're just kind of getting it from every side. Hun, if I met Kat in DC in the 90s, when it was not safe to walk on U Street, and now you can't even buy a condo in U Street, it is expensive. Look, the reality is, and I'm honest with my junior team, it's not as easy as just being confident. It's not as easy as just getting that one lucky shot. You're gonna have to work harder, but you can, because it's in you. And ultimately, if you think it isn't, become the hero that you need it to be. Like, that's it. Because if you're not in a work environment that's ready for you because they don't think that you look like you're supposed to be there, then be the hero that you need. Be your advocate. I think that's just another way of saying, like Minji, when you guys have been saying, like, be the advocate, be a voice. I love this quote, like a dear colleague and my best friend these days said, she gave this to me, and it just says she needed a hero, so that's what she became. So, you know, I had the worst bosses, like until 7 years ago, I had the worst bosses that just really made me work really hard for it. That's kind of my industry. But you know, it wasn't me, you know, like it wasn't going to be about me. And so recognizing that emotional piece of it can really be helpful, because you're always the haters are going to hate, like Mary J. Blige said it, like it's the haters in the dancery, they just exist. And nobody wants to see you succeed if they're feeling it's a piece of them, you know. But at the end of the day, I'm going to retire. And so I'm looking for people to take my spot. And so I look for those opportunities to bring, like really soon, I'm looking like to retire. So anybody wants to come along, I'm pulling them up and ahead of me. So I have a couple of really good questions here. Can we go to that? Wait, hold on. Now I have to go back. Okay. Minji said it was important to know your own worth. If you're not sure what it is, kind of to my point about, like, you know, not having great bosses, having to kind of make your own way, what's a good way to find out your worth and quantify that worth and kind of get into that confidence? Panelists?
Bloody hell, look at Glassdoor. They tell you what the worth is. There is so much information out there today that was not available previously. And I think that, and you need to know what that is. And you need to also have a number in your head of what you think that is. But I think worth is not necessarily just your salary. It's what you bring to the table. It's how you can pay it forward, how you can help the next generation, how you, you know, participate in your community. It's all of those things, because you have value beyond your salary. You have value by teaching, by mentoring. So I think all of those things create who you are and your value. And you need to leverage that. And for me, I leverage that to pay it forward, because I know that if I pave the road and help that next generation, it just makes it easier.
When I would add access too. I would add access. Like if you get access to the right people, that also is power.
You know, and the truth is that it's really not that hard. When I was doing this, you know, I think I mentioned about this executive, you know, mentor circle. Bloody hell, I emailed the CIO. I emailed these executive VPs, and they all said yes. It's kind of like yes to the dress. Yes, I want to help. It's so bloody easy. Don't make it such a big thing. And we could all be doing that. It's just an ask. And even if they say no, it really is a not now.
I was going to say, when that's yes, at your stage in your game, that feels right. But if I'm a young person and I actually kind of was interpreting that question two different ways. One, how much am I worth? But also, how do I find that worth to be like Minji and super confident and just be like, this is my thing. These are my standards, you know, high standards. That's my thing. So, you know, I agree with that, but it's also like, we have to give space for people to figure out who they are, because they're still exploring and finding their more authentic voice in that professional space. Like, I just would never, I want to, you know, caution people to feel like they can just be like, I need 100 grand, because that just might not be realistic. But there is a way to, you know, I think there's value in both perspectives.
Yes, Kat, I would say something along the lines of, if it's really hard for you to start to conceptualize what your worth is and what it's made up of,
Yes.
One thing I would do is go to your loved ones, right? People that you really trust and respect, and ask them, hey, what are my strengths, right? What do you think I'm very strong at? And what do you think I'm very suited for, right? Why do you see me as someone that you care about, right? What is likable about me? What makes me strong? I think reaching out and seeing what your loved ones will have to say about you is something that can make you start to rethink your own self-image, right? Like I had never thought I was confident until Dan told me, and then that changed my own self-image. Like, oh my gosh, I've been confident this whole time. And I think that really helps, especially if you can't find it within yourself. And going back to something that you said, Kat, about the story, I really loved your story, by the way, of a character being written about you, right? And then them wanting to cast someone else, right? Thinking that it doesn't fit an Asian American or Asian woman mold. I don't know about you guys, but some of the fiercest women I know are Asian, right? My mom is the most scariest woman I've ever met, right? Like there are so many fierce female leaders, right? Those people just haven't been exposed to them or don't have the relationship that we do. So I think really opening that up, changing that perception is something that we should really aim to do, right? I am so proud of my very fierce and loud Asian mother and how she's raised me to be a very fierce woman myself. So that's something I would say, knowing your worth and knowing where you come from and what makes you special. That's something that everyone has to try to explore within themselves, and it's never too late to do so and to start that journey and continue that journey.
I know anyone more terrifying than my mother. Yes. I am a grown woman. I pay my own taxes. I have children. I have all these homes and all these cars. No, I'm kidding. But like, I'm scared of my mom, like for real. And what is more, I don't know what can get you any more excited than hearing all of these perspectives of successful women who are us, like we exist, like we are doing it. We're doing the work. We are doing it. HUD knows Barack Obama, for God's sakes. Like, come on. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Oh my God, Barack, bring him back. So that's really helpful because it seems also in our talks at my firm that, you know, with the model minority concept and like, you know, people being of different generations, sometimes people don't feel like they should be speaking up or speaking out, or that they're worth it, or that they're allowed to, or that they should. Someone earlier on the chat said that, you know, they're not usually allowed, like they feel like they should keep their head down and work hard. That's very common. Again, read Bamboo Ceiling. I've got all my books here listed for you in case you can see over my shoulder. I'm big on books. Let's see, I think we have one more joke, or excuse me, scary Asian mother. That's why I said joke. Y'all, scary Asian, that's a different Ascend conversation and panel, okay? We had another question, Tina, or did I catch all of them?
Scary Asian Moms is therapy. That's a different session.
That's a whole different session. That'll be for Mother's Day. Join Ascend, Women of Ascend. Kidding, Zumi. I'm kidding. Oh, how do you get, this is good. Okay, we have 1 minute. And let's keep it tight. Is that okay, Tina? Because they can read the upcoming events. This is a good one. This is perfect for this is a great way to end. How do you get a chance to speak when you're on a team full of people, men, who are louder and love to speak and hear themselves speak, or like to speak for you? That's weird. I just said that. Did I just say that? Can we hear from all four panelists? Anyone who wants to stay on, if you got to go, you got to go. But I would love to have one last really strong learning of how to be heard in a very loud group. So panelists, jump in. Who wants to go first?
I'd say that one of the things that you can do is get yourself on the agenda. Put yourself on the agenda, and in preparations for that meeting, go and get some head nodding to make sure that people are aligned with what you're going to tell, you know, the story that you're going to be telling. And if someone is taking your ideas, you can also have other people in the room that's going to say, you know what, Wynn just said that, and I think that that makes a lot of sense too, so that they will reinforce that your idea was heard.
Something I would say is if you're in the room, it's because your opinion matters, right? You're not paid to sit there and not give any opinions. Like, that's why you're there, right? If you're in there, it's because your opinion matters. So know that and express your opinion. If someone talks over you, you can always say, you know, excuse me, or you know, like, look, I'm saying something here. When you spoke, I didn't talk over you. I'd love to have your attention at this point. I think I have something very important to say. But yeah, I would go in there knowing that you were invited to that room for a reason. And so you should stand there with your head held high and share and express your genuine thoughts and feelings on things.
Yeah, I've modeled some bad behaviors. I promised Zach that I'll behave. But some of the kind of the bad behavior I've seen is some of our male partners, when I'm speaking, they'll speak over me.
Mhm.
And what I've done, and that bad habit that I picked up, was I just continue to stay firm and finish my thought. And you've seen on the debate where, excuse me, right? And she finished her thought. I thought that was just, just really good example of how we can continue to, position ourselves as thought leaders and be able to speak our mind. The other thing that I've started to do differently is to slow down, even lower my tone, because I have a way of, hi, I'm Jess, and get very excitable. And if I'm really making a point, I've started to be very consciously to slow down and speak in a pace where people are leaning into you than me just like over shouting above. So those are just couple just techniques that I've started to utilize to invite people to listen into me.
Those are very good
That
examples.
thing, speaking with conviction. If you start with conviction and know in your gut when it's right or wrong, or you're speaking up for yourself and advocating for your idea, start with conviction and use that gut feeling to just like bring it up. And to Jess's point and to Minji's point, like use your voice and use the position and your seat at the table to empower yourself. Let's remember that. I think that these are great suggestions.
It's time, ladies. Oh, I use the word that I don't like. It's time, women. It's time, women. It's time. It's time. Great point. You were invited to the meeting. You have an opinion. You were meant to be there. So it's time. Let's go ahead and turn it over. Thank you so much, Jess, Hun, Win, Minji. Thank you so much for allowing me to join you. This is Kat Sanchez. I'm turning it over back to Tina Cooper at Ascend to wrap it up.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending tonight's panel. And I hope you'll all join me in recognizing again our wonderful panelists, Win, Han, Jess, Minji, and our moderator, Kat, as well. It's one of the reasons why I'm just so proud to volunteer with Ascend, is because we have the privilege of getting to meet amazing leaders like the ones we've talked to today. And to work with amazing partner organizations like Protiviti, Northwestern Mutual, Oracle, and Under Armour in putting together programs like this one. So thank you so much, everyone, for being so generous with your time, your authentic experiences, and your intellect. I'm just really inspired by the examples that you each set in your respective industries. And I plan to bring some of these advices and techniques to work tomorrow. And I'm also delighted that we had so many people tune in today. So May is AAPI Heritage Month, and we've partnered with up to 15 other organizations in the DMV area to host events that build community, to help educate others on the history and experience of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, to really celebrate the rich and diverse cultures we all represent. So if you've enjoyed today's discussion and want to participate in more Ascend partnered events in the near future, please mark your calendars. I've got on screen some of the upcoming events, and feel free to subscribe or follow our social media accounts so you'll get the latest when the registration details are available. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. That's the end of our program. And again, I hope everyone's gotten some advice they can take back to work tomorrow. Thank you.